Hello. Testing, testing, testing. Is this working? Here we go. The lights are a good sign that the show's starting, so take your seats. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here. My name is Alex Burden. I'm the Executive Director of the Truman Library Institute, which is the nonprofit partner of the Harry S. Truman Library and Museum. I want to welcome all of you to this special evening here at the Truman Library, the appearance and book talk from one of America's great politicians, former Speaker Nancy Pelosi. A lot of energy in the room tonight. I feel it. We had a wonderful meeting in the back with a few friends, including someone who told me that they woke up this morning with a smile on their face for the first time in quite a while. So I hope you all are feeling joyous. And I want to welcome all of you. Also, we have a huge audience, live stream viewers tonight, more than 750 individuals. Those of you who are watching from the comfort of your home on your couches, thank you for being with us. Thank you all for following us. Thank you all for supporting us. And I would be remiss if I didn't plug supporting the Truman Library. We've got our amazing Wild About Harry event coming up in about 2 months. So I encourage you to go to our website, trumanlibraryinstitute.org, and learn all about the Wild About Harry show that we have planned for April 24th. I want to recognize a few special guests that we have in the audience tonight. This includes Congressman Cleaver, a great friend of the Truman Library. Representative Sharice Davids, thank you for being here. Kansas City Mayor Quentin Lucas, thank you. Our hometown mayor, Roy Rowland. Roy. And if I'm not mistaken, the entire Independent City Council is playing hooky tonight, and they're here with us. So one more notice, if you haven't gotten the news yet, the Truman Library has a new director. His name is Mark Adams. He's here with us. Mark, do you mind taking a stand? Mark has been leading the Truman educational activities and playing a key role in our museum exhibit. He's been here for 28 years. 28 years. We're thrilled to have Mark as our new library director, and we look forward to working with him in a new capacity. So congratulations, Mark. But I'm mostly thrilled about welcoming Speaker Nancy Pelosi to the Truman Library today, and to have the honor to introduce her on this historic stage in this historic Truman Auditorium where so many meaningful occasions have happened over the last 68 years. Speaker Pelosi will be interviewed by David Von Draley. We all know David Von Draley and appreciate both him as a journalist, as an author of books, including the most recent one, Charming, the Book of Charlie, but he's also our go-to moderator of choice. So you know what David's background is, Washington Post, Time Magazine. Happy to have David here to interview and do the Q&A with Speaker Pelosi. And now to our guest of honor. Speaker Pelosi was elected the 52nd Speaker of the House in 2007 and served as the first woman Speaker for 8 years, off and on, until 2023. She came to Congress in 1987 for the children and to fight HIV and AIDS. And under Speaker Pelosi's leadership, Congress enacted transformative legislation, most notably the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. Speaker Pelosi continues to represent San Francisco in the House, a privilege she has treasured for 37 years. Speaker Pelosi and her husband, Paul, have 5 children and 10 grandchildren. Speaker Pelosi also had the pleasure of meeting Harry Truman. We wondered backstage if anyone else here had the pleasure of meeting Harry Truman. Anybody? 1, 2, 3? No, that's more. Betsy, that's awesome. I was pleased that the speaker assumed that I was young enough that I didn't meet Harry Truman. As I get older, I sometimes wonder about that. But I also want to thank her for the key leadership that she provided in getting a Truman statue installed in the rotunda of the U.S. Capitol in Washington, D.C. in September of 2022. It- If you didn't know that, Google it. If you haven't seen Tom Corbin's amazing statue of Truman, you should see it. Visit the Visitor Center. We also have a copy of that statue at Truman Hall in Brussels, Belgium, where many, many dignitaries and foreign policy leaders go visit the U.S. ambassador to NATO. More than 3 million visitors now get to see the statue of Harry Truman and ask, who is Harry Truman, which is our mission at the Truman Library Institute. So, Speaker Pelosi, thank you for that. Thank you for being with us tonight. Thank you for your appreciation of President Truman and support of his legacy. And thank you mostly for your distinguished service and impactful leadership as one of America's great public servants. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Speaker Pelosi and David Vondrelli to the stage.
I missed my chance to escort Speaker Pelosi on my arm tonight. She said she was planning on it until she saw me walk in on crutches myself. I'd like to say I'm on these because I was injured while doing the Grand Slalom at Vail. This week, and not that I blew out my knee walking down the driveway to get my newspaper. But that's life, isn't it? It's a wonderful honor to be here with, as Alex rightly said, one of the great public servants in American history and one of the most storied and important. We have a limited amount of time, so I want to avoid all the encomiums and go straight to the question and answer. And because we're here, I do want to start with your meeting, Harry Truman. Can you tell us about that? Can you explain what it was like to grow up in a family where presidents of the United States showed up at your breakfast table and how that started your training in the art of power?
Well, thank you, David, for that question. It's an honor to be here with you. Your reputation has preceded you, even though I didn't know it would be on crutches. And I did say, I can just walk out on David's arm. Nobody will even know. But then he was going to walk out on my arm, but that didn't work, that didn't work either. It's an honor to be here. I had the pleasure with Mark Adams to view so much of the museum and the library, not all of it, enough for me to come back again soon, I hope. And Eric, thank you for your introduction. Where did Eric go? There, I see. And Eric was when we installed the statue at the Capitol, Eric was there with us, and so many of you were as well. It's imagine that you're the Speaker of the House, and you're installing the statue of Harry Truman in the rotunda. My colleagues who were here, Emmanuel Cleaver. Emmanuel, you know what a big honor that is. And Sharice Davids is here as well. These are applause lines, folks. When I was a little girl, I met Harry Truman. I was like 10 years old. I was going to say it was 1950, but forget I said that. And he was invited by my father, who was the mayor of Baltimore, to the opening of the Friendship International Airport, which was the Baltimore International Airport. And he said to President Truman, it would be our great honor if he was president, would be there for this international operation. And President Truman said to him, Tommy, I'll come only on one condition, that you fly with me from Washington to Baltimore. My father did not fly. He did not fly. He said, no, I do not fly. I said, well, then I don't come to the opening. Well, of course, that was a compelling reason for my father to fly from Washington to Baltimore for that. And so the whole family was there to greet the President of the United States, Harry Truman, with such dignity and just such brilliance of all of it. Years later, my father was running for office again. The president came. He's no longer president. It was 1958. He came to campaign for my father, and I had a chance to sit with him and talk with him. And what was so interesting to me then was that he talked, David, about education, education, education. He said, I'll tell you what I told my own daughter before. Education is everything. Education. And to see the education that is afforded here is so remarkable. And so how proud he would be, and I know that he was responsible for the course that you're all on. But then to think, as practically a little girl and a teenager, to be Speaker of the House to install the statue of Harry Truman, walking in the rotunda. Walking in the rotunda. And I'm so glad that it happened when we still had control of the House. This is just a thought, just a thought. So I thought, well, I've always wanted to come here because I knew Harry Truman. I mean, I met him. Some people have never met him. How many of you met Harry Truman? Yeah, you're all too young, I guess. But anyway, it was pretty thrilling because in our house, we didn't have presidents for breakfast, but we had their pictures. So we had this gigantic picture, taller than I was when I was a teenager, and taller before I broke my hip, of Harry Truman, and one of Franklin Roosevelt. So I always told, when I go to the FDR stuff, I always tell them we had both pictures, and we would have friends in, and they'd say, well, who is this, what is this, blah, blah, blah. And we would tell them how proud we were to have, because Daddy served with both of them in the Congress of the United States. And then, after a while, they became a utility. We could measure our height on those pictures. And then we realized that we could measure our value, how we stood up for what they stood for. And that's why it's so thrilling for me to be here at the Harry Truman Library and Museum. So thank you for the honor to be here.
Thank you. So you went to school on the East Coast and you got married there, met Paul. But pretty soon you were in California. And I'm interested in whether they say all politics is local, but is there something universal enough that it's the same whether you're in Baltimore or in San Francisco, whether you're on the East Coast or the West Coast?
Well, Manuel, Mr. Cleaver will know, because we've worked together for so many years, that the one thing that both coasts have in common is you know how to count your votes. All right, you have to know how to count the votes. Let me tell you, he came to Congress. We had just had a tremendous victory. We had passed the Minimum Wage Act. Hadn't been passed in ages, still hasn't been passed in ages. This was a while ago when Mr. Manuel Cleaver came to Congress. And Therese, this is well before your baby time, but this is when he came. So he came, and we were having this rally to celebrate and also to launch our next crusade to raise the minimum wage again. And so they said, do you have somebody new on your side who's funny and can liven up this whole press conference we're having? So we said, well, we think we do. And Emmanuel came up. Remember, Emmanuel, you came over and you told him the story, "Tain't enough." Is that it? You remember that story? But he was the all-time star. And his brilliance on policy, he's deep in his faith, and he's a very funny man. So thank you, Emmanuel, for all of that. Thank you.
You were elected to Congress in 1987. Mm-hmm. So you went to Congress, Ronald Reagan was president.
Yes.
There were, I looked it up, 23 women out of 435 members of Congress.
Imagine.
And today there are more than 5 times that many. It's been a significant journey that you've made. From 1980, did you arrive knowing that you wanted to make your mark in leadership? Because
No.
not every legislator wants to be in leadership.
No, I did not arrive on that. It was sort of a serendipitous thing. I had no intention ever of running for public office, for Congress or anything. And then our congressperson was sick and was dying, and she insisted that I run for the seat. She said, "This is what will make me feel everything. You must run for the seat." So I went to, we have 5 children. 4 of them were in college. Well, by the way, I say this so that my archbishop can hear. We had 5 children in 6 years and 7 days. He doesn't care, but I don't care either. So in any event, 4 of them were in college. One of them was going to be a senior in high school. So how could I go to Congress? I had a child at home, teenager at home. So I went to her. I said, "Alexandra, Mommy has been asked to run for Congress. I've never had any ambition to run for Congress. I don't, any answer you give me is okay. I'm happy at home, but I have to give them an answer because they're on my case. You must run, you must run, you must run. So any answer you give me." Now here's what it is. I'll probably be gone about 3 nights a week when Congress is in session, and it's not always in session. So yes or no, it's all up to you. Any answer is fine. She said, "Mother," now I'm saying Mommy has been asked, "Mother, get a life." That had never been, I never heard that before. Now everybody says it, but this was 37 years ago. "Mother, get a life." What teenage girl doesn't want her mother out of the house 3 nights a week? That's what she said. That's what she said. Now, she and my husband get along very well, so it was okay. And so I did go get more of an additional life, shall we say, and run for Congress. But I didn't think I would stay so long, and I never intended to run for Congress, or I never intended to run for leadership. But people encouraged me to run for Congress, and I did. When they encouraged me to run for leadership, I did.
Did you have a mentor in particular as you were making that transition from member to future member of the leadership? Somebody coaching you, showing you a way, or was it all you figuring it out?
I never thought of it that way. My dearest friend in politics, before I wasn't even involved, just volunteering in politics, was someone named Leo McCarthy, who was the Speaker of the House then in California and then Lieutenant Governor. He was my dear friend, and he encouraged me to run for Congress. But I wouldn't say, I mean, my chairman of my campaign was Jack Murtha, which was a surprise to everyone because here I am, a left-wing San Francisco liberal, and Jack Murtha is a conservative, anti-choice member from Pennsylvania. But I'm not really a left-wing member, that's how I was characterized. And so he was the chairman of my campaign, and without any mentoring, it was a message. There was a message that I would be acceptable across the spectrum. But it was, here's the thing, why I ran. I had some self-motivation, David, in this respect. I was really tired of losing. We lost in '92, we lost in '94, we lost in '96, we lost in '98. I thought we lost in '92, we come right back. You know, and when we lost in '94, we come right back in '96. No. So what I said is, I know how to win elections. That's why we had so many more women, because I kept doing that, sowing that field with encouragement and training and money and all the rest for the women. So this is more than you ever want to know on the subject, and you can forget it immediately because it will be worthless information for the future. But what happened was, in 90 and 2000, people said to me, you really got to run. You got to save us. We're just not winning. And I know how to win elections. I do know how to do that. So I said, okay, let me just show you what we'll do in California this 2000 election. And that election was California with 52 members of Congress, 26 Democrats, 26 Republicans. The next morning, we had 31 Democrats, 21 Republicans, and because we just decided to go for it. And then we gained and gained, and now we have, in California, 42 Democrats and 9 Republicans. So a large way for us to get the majority of the House when we did, eventually in '06. I was new leader, and then in '06, we took the majority. Let me tell you how we did that, because I think this will give you some, because some people have been like, sad. We don't agonize, we organize. So in '06, in '05, sorry to go on, David?
Keep going, you're doing great.
He's in charge. In '05, Harry Reid, majority leader in the Senate, an angel of strength, a great person, he and I decided we're winning this year, this election, this next election. We are going to win. Now, George Bush had just won the election. How could that be? The war in Iraq, he just won the election. He was 58% in the polls in January of 2005. 58%. That is not exactly a good climate to try to defeat the president's party. So we knew that we had to change that environment. He gave us a gift. He gave us a gift. He said, I'm going to privatize Social Security. Thank you, Mr. President. So then, I don't go into all of it, but we built our campaign taking his numbers down so that by September, October of that same year, a year before the election, his numbers were 38. Privatizing Social Security, 38. So when he's at 38, that's a great atmosphere for us. We got the A team. We won the House the first time, and the Senate the first time since 1992 for the House of Representatives. Now, he said to me during the campaign, you keep saying I want to privatize Social Security. I only want to partialize Social Security. I said, you know what? That's good enough for me. So it's easier for us to win the House with a Republican in the White House. We did so in 18. He wanted to get rid of Affordable Care Act. We had 56,000 events across the country of people telling their stories. The stories are the strongest, right? My colleagues, the stories are the strong, telling their stories. Then we saved Social Security, thank you, John McCain. And we used that. People said to me, weren't you lucky that affordable health care became the issue in the campaign? I said, no, we were not lucky. We made our own luck. And that's exactly what we will do next. That election, we won 40 seats, 31 of them in Trump districts. We now have a Republican in the White House. He's going after Affordable Care Act and other things, carefully under the leadership of Hakeem Jeffries, who will be Speaker in 20 months. In 20 months. Some of you have said to me, oh, it's 4 years. No, it's 2 years, but it's 20 months. 20 months we'll have this election, and we will make the distinction that we did in '06 with a Republican president, in 18 with a Republican president, and now in 26, but we get ready in 25. So that's our path.
You've talked about you know how to win elections, and I don't dispute that a bit. it sounds like you're telling us that it's easier to organize a winning election around defending something that people support and care about than perhaps trying to sell them something new?
Well, it depends. You know, of course, we're always about the new. One of the biggest successes that we have had is under Sharice's leadership. And she could come up here and talk about it because it was about making sure people knew that something wasn't being taken away from them. But it was more than that. It was about freedom. It was about freedom. And that was what your election was about, wasn't it? And we listen to the people in their districts because they know what's going on in the minds of their constituents. And that election was a big one. It was about freedom, but the freedom not to have something taken away. So.
You, only Sam Rayburn led a congressional party longer than you. I think he had 12 terms and you had 10 as party leader.
Yeah, 10.
10 terms, every single term, first woman, ever. What was different about being a woman Speaker of the House, party leader? What did you bring, if anything, different from Sam?
Oh, not different from Sam. Since you mentioned Sam, before I answer your question, I will respond to it this way. When some of you came to Washington for the installment of the beautiful statue of President Truman, I talked to some of you about the education room. The education room, when I was Speaker for 8 years, was my favorite room to be in. It was beautiful. It was beautiful. It's not a big room, but it's beautiful and this and that. And we installed the Golden Gate Bridge and women winning the right to vote. And we made it lovely. So, but that was the room when Sam was Speaker, that after votes, the gentleman would say, let's go to the Education Committee. So that didn't sound like they were going out for a drink, right? Let's go to the Education Committee where they play cards, they do whatever, I don't know. And that was the room. That was the room where Sam Rayburn was holding court and Harry Truman was sitting in that room. We know what chair it was and all. And got the call from the White House that the First Lady, Eleanor Roosevelt, wanted to speak with him, and he was called out of there and became the President of the United States. So we in the House, this is on the House side, feel very connected to what brings us all here today, Harry Truman, President of the United States. So what's different about a woman? I'll tell you something that's really different. When you got the gavel, it's a different story. Right, Mr. Cleaver? The gavel. Boy, girl, whatever it is, get the gavel.
I'd like to walk you just through a few of them. We don't have enough time to more than scratch the surface of the defining battles that you led during your time as party leader and as Speaker. But one of the first defining moments was aftermath of 9/11, the invasion of Iraq, the Iraq War, the aftermath of that. Talk to us a little bit about your role, your thinking about that, how that shaped your leadership, the art of power.
Well, and that was one of the things that I did not get along with George W. Bush, even though we could be friendly about partially or not privatizing Social Security. I have had, in my time in Congress, 30 years of experience in the intelligence world. That's my wheelhouse. I've been there from the start, since early 90s. And I knew that there was no intelligence that supported the threat that the administration was contending Iraq was threatening us with. It just wasn't there. I mean, I read it all, my staff read it, it was not there. At the time, I said publicly, the intelligence does not support the threat. The press said, are you calling the president a liar? I said, no, I'm just stating a fact. Intelligence does not support the threat. For some reason, the president decided he wanted to go into Iraq. And it has been a very destabilizing war in so many ways in the Middle East. As we saw after the war, there was no threat as they described it. The evidence was not there. It's such a tragedy because they opened up Iraq to Iran. Iran now has free sway. Used to be Iran and Iraq, there was a balance there. No more. Iran had free reign. Iran was into Afghanistan and the rest. And Iran presents an existential threat to the region, to Israel and the rest, a nuclear threat all around. And it was exacerbated by freeing Iraq. So not only was I unhappy that they were misrepresenting it. For example, I went to Kuwait a few days with Jack Murtha and some of the Republican members as well. We went to Kuwait to see the troops, to see how they were, because even though we didn't agree with the war, we support the troops, and to see what their morale was and that. And we speak to them at breakfast, this or that, and I said to one of the young men, so what is the morale like that you think among your fellow soldiers here, because they were mostly all men? And he said, oh, the morale is high. They hurt us, and now we're going to hurt them. And I said, when did Iraq hurt us? They said, on 9/11. So they're telling these kids 9/11, that you know that Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11. So it was really an all-around misrepresentation to the American people and also to those young people who are risking their lives in that situation. So it was kind of a sad thing. But we've been in worse military situations, but I don't think any as destabilizing as that, because of what it meant with Iran and now all the proxies they have in Hamas and Hezbollah and this or that, and the disorder and the danger that they provide in that region.
Do you agree that we're still living with the aftermath of that decision?
In certain respects, yes, yeah. Well, and there were other things. I didn't go to the troops that we left in the 90s when we went in. The troops that we left there were a motivation for 9/11.
Let's go to the Affordable Care Act. So Harry Truman tried to pass health insurance. Obviously, the Clinton administration, led by your friend Hillary Clinton, tried to pass it in the 90s, and you got it passed. What was the difference?
Well, first let me say, we are sitting on the stage where Lyndon Johnson came to Independence, Missouri, to sign the Medicare legislation that was advocated by Harry Truman, right here on this stage. That is pretty exciting. It's made such a difference in people's lives. For 100 years, presidents have tried to pass affordable health care. Teddy Roosevelt, of the other side, Teddy Roosevelt, and then part of Teddy Roosevelt, because in Social Security, he tried to get health care pieces in that, but it didn't work. And it goes on, and then President Truman had this as a priority, and then Lyndon Johnson took up the Medicare part of it, and that was passed. But it never really took, it just never really happened with. Hillary Clinton. That was an effort, but it didn't happen. So when it was our turn, our thing, and you know this, Emmanuel, so well, we decided that we had a generational responsibility to pass the Affordable Care Act, affordable, quality, accessible health care. And there was nothing that was going to stand in our way. We just decided we were going to win when we decided we were going to win. It was a decision that we made. And we had a president, President Barack Obama, who was fully committed to that. So we had majority in the House, majority in the Senate, and we had the President of the United States. We had some differences along the way, not with him, but with someone in his office who wanted a mini plan. We're like, get out of here, this is not the generational, we ain't going mini, or this is not that. Perhaps you mistook us for somebody else, or we're not going mini. And so it was fabulous, but it took all the genius of the Congress. This was the work of the members of Congress. In the House, Henry Waxman on his committee, George Miller on his, a couple different chairs of Ways and Means Committee, but they really knew their stuff. And then the Senate, something similar. But the House. And so what was different between what we did and what they did in say Clinton and others, we wrote the bill in the Congress. We're going to pass the bill here, we're going to write the bill here. And it was contentious because we wanted to do so much more, but we were determined that we would pay for it as well. Well, it was some back and forth and the rest. And then we had 60 votes in the Senate. Then Ted Kennedy passed away. It was such a tragedy for us. We loved him so much. It was such a tragedy. But he was a lion when it came to for passing health care. It was his life's passion. So the press said to me, you're dead. I mean, that was their language. I mean, you're dead. You ain't going anyplace. You don't have 60 votes anymore. I said, we are not passing up an opportunity of a generation to pass affordable, accessible, quality health care. We're not letting anything stand in our way. If there's an obstacle in our way, we'll push open the gate. If the gate doesn't open, we'll climb the fence. If we can't do that, we'll pole vault in. If that doesn't work, we'll helicopter in. But we're not letting anything stand in the way of passing this legislation. So we had to, shall we say, readjust some of our legislation into reconciliation, which doesn't require 60 votes in the Senate, and we passed the bill. The press said, which one did you do? I said, well, you know, we did the first thing. We went right through that gate. We had the votes in the House and the Senate. We had the support of all of the groups, whether it's cancer or heart disease, whatever it is, people knew that we had to have this. And the volunteers from those organizations, everybody walked with us through the gates. Most important contingent were the nuns, because we did not have the bishops. 5 children, 6 years and 7 days. We did not have the bishops. They wanted to destroy the Roe v. Wade right there and then in that bill. But anyway, we didn't have them. But that's how we got it passed, with the public support. Inside maneuvering, you all know this. Inside maneuvering is so important, but the outside mobilization that lifts us all up and is our intellectual, it's an intellectual resource as well as an organizational and communications resource. That's what got us through. So that was the difference. The outside mobilization, we wrote it ourselves and the rest. And we got the big bill. We didn't get the mini. By the way, there's much more to be done. We don't consider that finished. We have much more to be done. for more people at a better price than the rest of that. And that's what we'll be campaigning on in the next 20 months.
Since you said this now twice, I do want to say, defending our side of the team, my wife and I had 4 in 5 years and 4 months and 12 days.
All right.
Not quite your record, but we're just passionate Protestants.
How lovely.
I'm so. I love the way you told that story because it's a story of a motivated, strong, self-determined Congress, and we're living in a time of galloping executive power seizures. I would argue both parties have seen presidents really put their elbows out in the past, during your time in Washington, to seize more and more and more power for the executive. How does this end?
Well, I think we have to go back to the beginning. Our founders, they were geniuses. They had a vision for our country based on values, and they were writing our documents. When they wrote the Constitution, fortunately, they made it amendable because they knew they could only do so much at that time. But one of the geniuses of the Constitution was the separation of powers, the system of checks and balances. They did not want a king. Washington did not want a king. They wanted a system of checks and balances, separation of power. And that is what is being totally abused by the current administration. Starting, the saddest part of it all is the United States Supreme Court, because that's a place where there should be the moderation. The current court believes, and they have acted this way, believes in as much authority to the executive branch as possible. That's why they gave them immunity. That's why they've passed some decisions that support the executive branch. It's just not right. And so we have that to deal with. But it's up to us in the Congress to respect the institution we serve in and not let presidents come and go. We're there. That president who's coming and going now diminish the power of the legislative branch. Article 1, the legislative branch. This is the voice of the people. And we must, again, fight all the way to protect the prerogative of the legislative branch. Otherwise, we will see what looks like a coup d'etat, a person taking over elements of our government that are, shall we say, harmful to individual people. And that's what we're there for, the individual people. So.
I suspect that there are conversations among your colleagues that they are not necessarily exactly the same things they say publicly, because there are political calculations about how they express themselves in public. Do you hear concern about the powers of Congress eroding generally among members? Is it rare that you hear that discussed?
What do you think?
I mean, I hope that it's a robust conversation in Congress. I would love to see Congress get up on its hind legs and seize back some of its power.
Well, what do you think? No, I don't think no. What do you think? Sharice, do you have anything? Not with this majority. No, but you see, if you're not committed to the institution, the legislative, the Congress of the United States, the People's House, and in the Senate, whatever they call themselves, the saucer to cool off what we do in the House or something, then what are you protecting? You're just there as a toady for Donald Trump.
Are there lessons, a couple of lessons you could give us from the first Trump administration that you think would be good to learn for this time around?
Well, I think it's important to note, and they don't, they talk about the Gulf of Mexico and the Panama Canal and Greenland and this because they want everybody to pay attention to that while they're raiding the Treasury of the information, data, and everything about people's personal lives. So we want to keep the conversation on the kitchen table of America's working families. And what people think we should do the right thing, but right now they care more about whether they can pay their bills than they care about whether he succeeds with the Panama Canal than Greenland and wherever else he's out there doing. So remember this, in his first term, the only thing he did was pass a tax scam on the American people. A tax scam on the American people. He had a bill that gave 83% of the benefits to the top less than 1%. Less than 1%. 83%, adding $2 trillion to the national debt with no benefit to the kitchen table of the American people, increasing the debt, giving benefits to the rich, and nothing to working families. That's his promise to do bigger next time. He wants to do it like $5 trillion to the national debt next time. But what happened to him in the first term, after he got that done with the Republican Congress, is we won the House. We won the House. And that stopped all of that. People say, oh, well, he calmed down in the second. No, he didn't calm down. We won the House. And that's what we have to do this time. But it takes careful messaging because, as you see, he thinks he has a mandate. You think he has a mandate to go to the Treasury Department, pull out your personal records, and use them against you in case you said anything against him? I don't know if you have, but I certainly have. So people said, oh, he was better in the end because other people weighed in with him. No, we weighed in with him. This time it's all worse because he has people that aren't even trained for the job. I mean, it's a ridiculous situation. But I do believe that when people get elected, they get elected. You have to respect that. You don't say, well, he shouldn't have gotten elected. Well, I don't think he should have. But he did. So he has the right to appoint his people and do what he has. And we have the right to disagree. We always want our president to succeed, whether we agree with him or not, but not succeed at the expense of America's working families, not succeed at the value of our Constitution, not succeed just tearing up the Constitution, as I tore up his speech, to do this to the country. We are in a very different place now. And again, is Hakeem Jeffries, our leader. He's remarkable. He has a great leadership team. And he knows that we have to prioritize and repetition, prioritize, and just take a few things that we want that are the most egregious to make sure the public knows. When we won before, we had just a few things like privatizing Social Security that we could show the difference between Democrats and Republicans. And by the way, we didn't lose in this last election. We won a seat. We're the only ones who won a seat. So we're on a path. We intend to win this, maybe this year, but certainly 20 months from now.
In light of your idea, that you focus on the key things, like, for example, you mentioned the tax bill and the uneven impact of that. Was it a mistake to do impeachment when you knew you couldn't get the votes in the Senate?
We had no choice. He had violated the law or the Constitution, he was impeachable. He was impeachable. Yes. No, it's no, I do not think
The decision to impeach is a political decision. You'd agree with that, right?
No, my members want to impeach him from day one. Right? Is that right? I had to go down in the well and pull them back from making their motion to impeach. No, that would have been political. When he did what he did in the first term, which was withhold the funds from Ukraine because he wanted a deal with the president of Ukraine, that gave us no choice. And of course, what he did as the president of the United States, inciting an insurrection of violence on the Capitol of the United States, the Congress of the United States, the Constitution of the United States, because that's the day that we're called upon to vote on to accept the verdict of the votes of the Electoral College. So that's constitutional. And that he wanted that to stop, and that's why he sent those people in to put a bullet in my F-word head and a gallows around the vice president while he said he didn't care. So, yeah, we have no second thoughts about impeaching him. And we do have, now, let me say this. Our founders thought that we could have a rogue president. It's hard to believe that they thought we could have a rogue president and a rogue Senate. But that's what we had, a cowardly Senate that did not vote. We got a larger number on the second impeachment, but not enough to impeach. And it was all about how, now you're talking politics, you're talking about his ratings back home in their districts, their states, and all of that. Sure. No.
So I want to get to some questions that members of the audience have submitted.
Right.
People are interested in hearing you talk about how politics has changed over your career. I think there's a public sense that it's changed for the worse, that there's less comedy, there's less compromise, but I don't know how it looks from inside.
Well, I've been there a long time, over 37 years. And when I went to Congress, was never any thought that Republicans were bad and Democrats were good. We just had different point of view about what the role of government is. This is since the beginning of our country. What is the role of government, the federal government? Is it, how much control should it have over localities and states and this or that? And that's the beauty of it all. So you go there exuberant, thinking, I'm going to be able to debate these issues and this or that. And that's pretty much the way it was. The differences were not so great. I became an appropriator somewhere along the way there. And appropriating with the Republicans was a negotiation. It was a negotiation. We didn't always have shared values. So Silvio Conti, who was a Republican member of Appropriations, usually voted with us, but he said some of the members would say to him, Silvio, who are we throwing under the bus today, old people or children? Because they didn't share exactly our priorities in that regard. But it was, again, a very different place. And and it was like a kaleidoscope. Now, sometimes, this I really miss. Sometimes it might be a chunk of Republicans over here with a whole lot of Republicans over there to make a majority. Sometimes that chunk would be Democrats over here with a lot of Republicans over there to make a majority. So you never knew where the majority could come from. And everybody was a strength to you because they could be a vote. Like a kaleidoscope, you change the design. So then what issues like environment, very bipartisan. Issues like human rights, and I still work in human rights issues with my colleagues, Republicans, all the time, and that's bipartisan. But issues that relate to just some things that are regional to their area, that are regional issues and the rest. And so you never knew. So we always treated each other beautifully because you could be my vote tomorrow, even though you weren't yesterday. I don't mean to sound so pragmatic, but that's the way it is. So in any case, then what happened in the 90s was Newt Gingrich came in with a ton of money, just a ton of money, and spent it, and that's how they won in 94. And they would train the new members to say things like, the Democrats are traitors, they're treasonous. They had their own lingo that they started against us, and it became quite a different place, although there was still some bipartisanship. And then that just got worse. And then, of course, he who shall be nameless became president, and that really took us to a different place, because that isn't even about politics or governance or anything else like that. It's just about a very strong personality, give him credit for that, but not values-based or visionary in any way. So it's tough. It's hard now. It's hard. But you always want to treat, I always think of people as who they represent. I respect you for who you represent. I respect you for who you represent. And isn't that right, Mr. Cleaver? We respect them in that way?
Yes, absolutely.
What do you think, Cherise?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I actually love that you're bringing the pragmatic, a pragmatic voice to the group, so they know that we actually do try to work together, or
We
we
do.
have.
We really do try to work together, and we'll see what we can accomplish. They only have like a 2-vote majority now. Maybe it'll be 3 if they win an election, but we might win it too. And that is, it's what the issue is at the moment. You know, if they're talking about giving a $5 trillion tax cut to the rich, put it on the national debt at the expense of working families, whom they promised they were going to lower prices and all that, there's no way we can be part of that. But there are some things we might be able to. Yeah.
Putting on your intelligence experience hat, what do you anticipate international reaction is going to be to Trump's disruptive approach to foreign policy?
What do you think? You know.
I think it's going to be ad hoc. I think it's going to be a lot like we saw today, that he pokes Mexico, and Mexico does or pretends to do something different than they were doing otherwise, and he puts a feather in his cap and moves on to the next thing. But maybe
Yeah, but-
there's something more systemic.
Well, the trade thing as almost a gimmick. I'm going to put a trade on you unless you take these immigrants. I'm going to put trade on you and put tariffs on you unless you. Hey, you know, what's so clever about that? Okay, so he does that and he makes it like it's a victory or something. But the bigger issue in all of this, and I come back to Harry Truman, and I want to read this because I love it so much. Upon signing the North Atlantic Treaty, NATO, Harry Truman created and signed the NATO treaty. He said, "We believe that it is possible for nations to achieve unity on the great principles of human freedom and justice." Human freedom and justice. Not about pulling a trade and don't take it back or whatever it is. To quote another president, when I was still in school, I went to the Kennedy inauguration, and there's a beautiful picture of the 2 presidents in there, a Kennedy inauguration. And everybody in the country knows that in that speech, the president said, "To the citizens of America, ask not what America can do, your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country," right? You all know that, right? You learned that in school. To you, it's history. To me, it was my youth, but okay. But the next sentence, the very next sentence that I took home for me, Mark, was this. He said, "To the countries of the world, ask not what America can do for you, but what we can do working together for the freedom of mankind, working together. No condescension. We'll tell you what to do and you follow us. What we can do working together. So I think that a president, and it would be great to see it, and I don't think it's impossible, but close, that he could have some thought that maybe he could reach out and say, let's do something working together. And for the freedom of mankind. I mean, that's what we're about, right? So it's scary to see what they might want to do in Ukraine. We have to protect Ukraine. They're protecting their democracy and therefore fighting for our democracy as well. This is a very difficult situation, so we'll see what he does. But what Kennedy was talking about is we don't order people around. We work together. Joe Biden did that with the Ukraine thing. He worked together with people. He didn't say, this is the American formula, now all of you get on board, right, guys? They did it together. Not as fast as I would have liked, but nonetheless, that's what they did. Is that it?
I could go on all night. I think everybody could, but this is our time. Thank you so much.
No. Before we thank each other, and wasn't David wonderful? Can you imagine what an honor, a privilege, a thrill it is to be on this stage? Earlier, we talked about the fact that Lyndon Johnson came to Independence, Missouri to sign the Medicare bill in the presence of President Harry Truman because Harry Truman conceived that. This is the place where Harry Truman lay in state, right here on this stage, in this room where we are. Let us be inspired by him. What a beautiful, you see him in the Capitol walking around. He was an ordinary person doing, he seemed to be extraordinary things. Deep values, beautiful vision, a wonderful president of the United States. How fortunate we are to be present in a place where he went on to heaven. So thank you, David. Thank you. Thank you. Let us pray that God blesses America, please. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you all so much.